Hello, I'm Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss fantasy Formula 1. Imola is in the books and Monaco is ahead of us, so we're going to talk about Imola, what happened there, and what my plans are and what your plans should be for the Monaco Grand Prix. But first, I just want to say, if you were there last Saturday for the deadline stream, my first ever stream that I did on this channel, thank you so much. It went really well. It was a great time, and I'm going to be doing it again at Monaco. So this Saturday, about 2 hours before the deadline, so 2 hours before qualifying begins, I will be live right here talking all about the results of free practice in Monaco, what assets I think we should be going for, and if the free practice sessions have changed my mind on any potential transfers, and also respond to your questions. You can leave your teams in the comments and I'll see what we can do. It was a great time and I'm looking forward to it on Saturday. But without further ado, let's get into this video. So my final transfer ended up being Red Bull Racing to McLaren and Carlos Sainz to Lando Norris. Those were my two free transfers. I did not take a -10 hit for any additional transfers, though I was thinking about doing other things as well. I had a lot of things on my mind. That was the main reason why I wanted to do a deadline stream, because I had not decided yet what to do. I couldn't make a video saying, oh, this is going to be my team, because it was changing every minute. And it was a very close call, but I ended up getting the McLaren pill and going for McLaren, and I also ended up going for Lando Norris over Charles Leclerc, and both of those decisions worked out perfectly. It really could not have been a better week for me given where my team was at the start of it. So overall, great performance from my team, which puts me at an overall rank of 13,000 now, finally getting up to some decent ranks here. And with Lando Norris' 1 million price increase, I'm now actually getting somewhat of a budget to work with. A budget that I've been very much missing for, the season that's been. I was talking a lot at the deadline stream about the difference between going between McLaren and Red Bull Racing. And it was very close. I ended up going with McLaren and keeping Lance Stroll. The thing with McLaren is that I got very lucky with Lando Norris again, and I sort of did a calculation based on how many points, worst case scenario, McLaren would get over Red Bull if you were to keep Red Bull. And McLaren ended up getting more points than Red Bull because Perez had a stinker. There was no overtaking at Imola, barely at all. So for that reason, the McLaren switch was the correct one. But let me tell you, it's not going to be that easy every week, and it's going to keep being a decision we're going to have to make going forward. So if you went for Red Bull Racing, don't feel bad. Verstappen is still going to win every race, and Red Bull Racing only got one of the 3 pit stop points available. They got the maximum, they got the 10 one, but they didn't get the 5 and the 3. And if they had gotten one more of those top 3 pit stops, they would have beaten McLaren for points. So the Red Bull Racing McLaren discussion is still very close. I think Ferrari, even though they were worse than McLaren now, just because at the price point they're at, I think they're still brilliant. The price increases that they get as a constructor, I think Ferrari is a no-brainer for everyone. You can just fit it into every team. It's super easy. If you're going for some sort of a different thing, I know McLaren and Mercedes were technically the best pairing for this weekend, but I just think Ferrari is the best constructor going forward, and I think it's a constructor that should be on everyone's team. Then with McLaren and Red Bull, it's gonna be a toss-up moving forward for sure. I think the main one though is that while McLaren is below 25 million, which is that A tier shift where an asset goes from B tier to A tier, I think once McLaren hits 25 million, I think Red Bull Racing is going to be better, and that's my current plan at least, to keep McLaren until they hit 25 million and then switch back to Red Bull Racing, because I think Red Bull Racing are better if Perez just don't qualify in 11th. If Perez would have been like 6th, Red Bull Racing would have been the team to score more points this weekend. But just because McLaren and Red Bull are so close right now, I think Red Bull is slightly ahead on points gain, but just because McLaren is getting those budget increases on top of what the points that they offer, McLaren just wins out for me currently. Though I wouldn't stress to sell Red Bull Racing at all, because Red Bull Racing can, of course, I mean, a 1-2 in Monaco is definitely on the cards for Red Bull, and in that scenario, those with Red Bull Racing are sitting there laughing, whereas the points difference now is not that big. So overall, Red Bull versus McLaren, I don't think is the end of the world. But personally, I prefer McLaren until they hit 25 million, and then I prefer Red Bull Racing. Speaking of hitting 25 million, let's just bring it over here, I guess. Lando Norris has hit 25 million. He's now an A-tier asset alongside Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing, which I personally think heavily decreases his value as an asset. One of the main things about Lando Norris compared to someone like a Max was that he was getting those price increases, and now he won't be. Now he will be increasing at maximum 0.2 in a race, and that's if you get 3 times the average score in a race week, which he did this week, but he won't get that every week. The thing with Lando Norris, though, and I'm speaking fast here, I'm trying to get through and get to my Monaco selection, but the thing with Lando Norris is that he just has that driver of the day vote on lock. Because it's a fan vote kind of thing, Lando Norris is just so unbelievably popular right now that I truly believe Max, if there was any race where Max wins and deserved the driver of the day, it would have been this weekend. But Lando Norris still got it, and I posted about it on Twitter, where you should follow if you want to see news about my team and streams and things like that. Link in the description. The Lando Norris driver of the day point is just inevitable at this point. It's just another one. Back to the team then. Lance Stroll performed swimmingly, and pretty much all C-tier assets this week were pretty bad. And that is one point I want to hammer home as we go into Monaco. So you don't need me to be telling you that Monaco is a race without many overtakes. You already knew this, I presume. So let's look at the price changes stat, right? This is on F1 Fantasy Tools. It's a fantastic website. Everyone should be using it. And if you go to, this is on the race results tab, you can change what you want to look for. The base one is just fantasy points, but I'm looking at price changes right now. And this is for Australia, but let's look at Imola. 10 assets decrease in price on the driver's side. 4 on the constructor side. The most this season, by far. Australia was also pretty close. Sargent obviously didn't race, but apart from that, they had 8 assets decreasing in price. And out of those 8 assets, 3 of them DNF'd. And if you don't know how price changes work, I have an entire video made about that, but essentially, it's based on the average score, like the average driver score. So the fact that in Australia, 3 drivers DNF'd. I know Russell DNF'd at the end, so he didn't technically count as a DNF, but you know. 3 drivers DNF'd, which heavily decreased the points, right? Like, that brought down the average point score by a lot. And there were still another 5 drivers that decreased in price that week. And in Imola, there were 10 drivers decreasing in price. Pretty much every C-tier asset but Stroll and Magnussen, and then Alonso. So, with all of these price decreases, what is the common factor here? And if we go down here and look at race overtakes, and we look at the average race overtakes so far this season based on the race, the common denominator is that in Australia, the average overtakes per driver was 1.8, and in Imola, it was 2.2. In Monaco, in 2012, there were like 13 overtakes total, and last year there were like 23, but that was just because it was raining. This number is going to be even lower, which means that I think pretty much every C-tier asset is going to decrease in price again. So don't be disappointed when your cheap assets decrease in price. What can we do about that? What does that mean for us going into our selection for Monaco? Well, we might just want to try and maximize points. I think Tsunoda and Hülkenberg are the main 2 to think about, because they've been very solid getting into Q3 this season, and if they get into Q3, they might get points, and since it's hard to overtake in Monaco, if one of them puts it on like a P7 like Tsunoda did in Imola, maybe they can stick to P7, P8, and those points that they get for just qualifying and landing in a point scoring position and not losing that many positions in the race might be enough to give them a price increase. So high upside, good qualifying drivers like Hülkenberg and Tsunoda, I think, are your priority if you're making C-tier transfers this week. I think Stroll is also pretty good. If I were to bet on anyone to DNF, it would probably be Sargent, Albon, and then Stroll. But if Stroll doesn't DNF, he could be on one of those higher positions, and thus actually get some points. So Stroll is also pretty good for a C tier asset. And then after that, it's the only real choice you have. Like, if you have an Ocon who is going to qualify in P15 or P16 and then stay there, maybe get an overtake, that's not going to be enough. They're going to decrease in price. I think your main bet is trying to get the driver that's going to qualify in last. I'm talking Sargent or Magnussen, and then have other people DNF so that they gain positions. Because if someone gains like 4 or 5 positions in Monaco, starting from P20, I think that could be a route to points and price increases. So with that, I know Gasly and Ocon have become increasingly popular, but I think they're bad in this race unless they actually qualify in last, because the Alpine is getting a bit better and Gasly and Ocon are pretty good drivers. So they haven't been qualifying at the very, very back of the field, and I think that's going to be to their detriment in Monaco, because I don't think a Q3 is on the cards for them at all. Now, I know I just said that Stroll is a good pick, and I do think he's a pretty good pick at C tier. He is one of those drivers that's going to increase in price most of the time, unless he crashes. One thing I will say is that what's even better than Stroll is a lineup that I discussed on my deadline stream about people who were wildcarding. Because a lot of people with the budget they're at right now, especially if you sat with Lando Norris and looking to sell Lando Norris, and especially if you have your wildcard and can make more than 2 transfers, a double B tier driver lineup could be very, very powerful in Monaco. Because of what I just discussed, right? I think most of the C tier assets are going to decrease in price. I think it's going to look very similar, unless there's like 5 crashes, like 5 DNFs, or something like that heavily brings down the point scoring average. If only like 1 or 2 drivers DNF, I do think we're going to see 9 or 10 assets decrease in price again on the driver side. So for that reason, if you could find a way to run double Ferrari, or like a Sainz Piastri lineup, I think that could be very strong. But especially for budget, but also points wise, of course. I personally cannot afford that. Not with this lineup of drivers. But I can afford it with this, right? I can go for something like this now. Will I go for that? Probably not. That is 3 transfers. There's a -10. But it's definitely not something that I haven't thought about, right? Like, this lineup looks pretty good. And if it didn't take 3 transfers to get to, if it was only 2 transfers, I probably would go for it. But currently, there's no way I can afford this with Lando Norris and Stroll, right? You have to sell those 2. And I can just barely afford this. And on this lineup, I think like all 3 of these cheap assets are going to decrease in price. I think that's kind of inevitable. Hulkenberg has a chance, right, to get some points, I guess. But I do think Piastri and Sainz, if they just end up P4, P5, they're going to increase in price. So if you're going the budget route, something like this, or even better, if you can squeeze a Leclerc in there, I think I can fit Leclerc over Sainz if I go for Sargent. Yes, I can. So just exactly right. So something like this. And my budget is not the biggest one on in the field right now. Like, I only have 109.9 million. I know multiple people who are up in the 112s and perhaps even further. So, you know, if you can even stretch to a Sainz, Leclerc, McLaren, Ferrari, so this, right, and can fit in cheap drivers here, incredible lineup. And I think that is probably going to be like the best team that you can afford here. Obviously, you cannot plan for DNFs, really, but I think this is going to be one of the highest performing teams. Either this, or if you can even stretch it further than that, something like this, if McLaren's better than Ferrari. These are the type of teams that's going to perform really, really well in Monaco, both budget and points-wise. So if you're on a wildcard, I think that team is the strongest that I just show you. But I've already used my wildcard. That is not on the cards for me. I have 2 free transfers, and this is what I'm planning to do with it. So Lando Norris likely leaves my team. Amazing stay in my team for the brief period he was there. But he is an A-tier asset now, and we need to assess him differently because of that. If we get to Monaco free practice and it's looking like McLaren's really, really fast, outperforming Red Bull like they were again, even if Max Verstappen gets first, Lando's probably getting second then, and that means driver of the day. That means a lot of points. So I'm not sold on selling Lando, but I'm not sold on having him as an A-tier asset either. So the options I have is either I can get in Max Verstappen now. Because of Lando's 1 million increase, I can now get to Max Verstappen. And I think a Max Verstappen Ferrari McLaren team, if Perez is going to be underperforming like he is, I think could be very, very powerful, because Max Verstappen, he doesn't care if the car is having, it's a bad weekend for the car, he puts it pole and wins anyway. So something like this, selling Lance Stroll, and then it would be Kevin Magnussen coming in, I can exactly afford that, and I kind of like this switch. The other option, if I don't want to go for Max Verstappen, and I'd rather say, Max Verstappen is looking the fastest, but Ferrari look on it, I think Charles Leclerc could be the one coming in for me. And in that case, it would be the exact same switch, but it would be Valtteri Bottas in for K-Mag instead. And the reason I want to do this is because, like, if I have to get Max Verstappen in, I obviously have to sell Stroll to afford him. But K-Mag is just inevitable. Again, somehow, the only, from the bottom 5, the only driver from the bottom 5 teams to increase in price, qualified 8th, and then just an incredible 6 positions gained. 7 overtakes in Imola is insane. He had a great race, to be fair to him. So K-Mag just seems inevitable, and if he's going to qualify in P18, P19, and then people are going to crash, he's going to gain positions. If anyone's increasing in price from those bottom 5 drivers, that's not bottom 5 team drivers, that's not Tsunoda or Hülkenberg, it's probably Magnussen. So I kind of like this. I think this team right now are the 4 best C-tier assets in Stroll, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, and Magnussen. So I like that. And then Charles Leclerc, again, how good is Ferrari going to be? We don't know yet. It looks to be a pretty exciting season. Everyone's so close. Charles Leclerc in 3rd is kind of useless, because at that point I'd rather just go for Max Verstappen in 1st or Norris in 2nd. So Charles Leclerc, I think, is only good if he's 2nd or 1st. Because I think if Leclerc's 2nd, he could be the one to scoop driver of the day. And that's kind of what I'm predicting. I'm predicting what people will vote for. So Leclerc could for sure take it, and he looks to have stepped up his qualifying game again, which is obviously very important. But that Ferrari is slightly struggling to match the McLaren and the Red Bull in qualifying, it appears. Every interview with the Ferrari boys, they're saying, "Oh, I did the maximum. I got the maximum. I didn't make any mistakes. Pole was not on the cards." So we'll see. So this is an option. The Max Verstappen lineup is an option. It's probably one of those two. I don't see myself getting rid of McLaren until they hit 25 million. I'm just going to pray that Red Bull don't sweep the fastest pit stop category, and that they, share the spoils a bit on that side of things. Hülkenberg and Tsunoda going nowhere. They're staying my team probably for the foreseeable future. And there's not really any other assets that I'm interested in currently. Piastri could be a bit of a bargain, and a pretty big differential at only owned by 16% if McLaren are much better than Ferrari. I don't see myself going for Piastri personally. I probably would go for Leclerc over him, but Piastri, put it P2 ahead of Lando, and if he didn't have that grid penalty, he would have been in the mix at the front and probably would have taken P3 in Imola, so at least. So I think Piastri is very interesting. I'm considering it, just not for this race personally. I think Piastri is the strongest when you can fit him in alongside another B-tier driver to use the DRS boost on. So the kind of team that I showed you earlier, where you had Sainz and Piastri, or Leclerc and Piastri, or Norris and Piastri, together with Ferrari and McLaren. I think having Piastri as the single driver, it just leaves a lot of money left in the tank that you could use for another asset. So, in my case, I could stretch to Max Verstappen. I think Max Verstappen is just better than Piastri, obviously. So, because of that reason, Oscar is in that awkward price category, where it's if you just go for him, on a single B tier driver build like I have currently, you're not getting all the value that you could out of your money, even though it's a big differential. But like I discussed earlier, if you're on a wild card or something similar, I think going for that double B tier driver with Ferrari and McLaren is by far the strongest team you can go for in Monaco, and that's what I would be aiming for. That about does it for this video. If you have any questions about what to do with your personal teams, leave them in the comments right now and I'll look to respond to them. I'm usually pretty good at responding to comments at least the first 2 or 3 days after I post a video. So if you leave your comments now immediately, I will be try and get to them. If you made it all this way, please like the video. You clearly stayed long enough for that. And also subscribe, because more things are coming. Reminder again, I'm doing another deadline stream 2 hours before the deadline on Saturday on this channel. So come here, check it out, ask some questions, hang out in chat. It's gonna be fun. Maybe maybe stay and watch the qualifying with us. Monaco's usually an exciting one for qualifying. So thank you so much for all the support. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.